joining us now to unpack this with the legal perspective more is legal practitioner and Arise News analyst Frank Tietie. Good to see you and thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Well, I'm excited first we join the rest of the world to spotlight this, but again there are a lot of things that may be hindering what we've just seen so far. Before we get to the legal aspect, because we saw that picture of the man who attempted to jump over in Lagos, and ultimately he's been sued for attempted suicide.
He's been charged.
Yes, he's been charged for attempted suicide. But how does that work for people who are in dire need of some clinical attention?
I think there's still a lot of misunderstanding of mental health disorders across the world, and particularly in our own culture. And you just imagine that people needing help are criminalized. That shows you the kind of, wide misconception that even lawmakers have. To think if the Criminal Code of 1945 criminalizes attempt to commit suicide, if the Lagos state law that is as recent as 2015 still still punishes attempts at suicide or anybody who helps a suicidal person, which is understandable. It shows that there's still a lot more to be done. But the idea is this: when you say we're spotlighting World Mental Health Day, the World Health Organization has made it a theme for this year as mental health being a universal human right. I think that will help greatly in changing the mindset of governments across the world and in localities across countries like Nigeria, in changing the mindset. The mindset is terrible. It's very negative. And I just returned from Benin City to listen to the inaugural lecture of Professor Kingsley Akibe, Professor of Psychiatry, who delivered a lecture on colo-mental, which is the elephant in the room, our mental health. And even though the figures are not readily available in the health institutions, but it gives an impression that a large number of Nigerians are actually suffering from mental disorder. He typified it that the stigma is so bad that you never find any mental health hospital having a mortuary, because nobody wants to actually refer to his relative or to have died in a mental health hospital. So it's a matter of social mindset.
Yes, indeed. And speaking of figures, 2019 alone, 7,000 of the 100,000 in Nigeria alone actually took their own lives. Suicide's been described as a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Now let's talk about the lawmakers weighing in. Early this year, they actually said, look, we can't continue to decriminalize suicide. How
we can't
about
continue to criminalize?
Yes,
Okay.
That's their position, as at February of this year. That, look, can we replace it with, community service and stuff like that can actually provide an opportunity for, would-be suicidal person
I don't think
to have a rethink?
I don't think so. I think
what would be the alternative? What's the best
The alternative
approach?
clearly is to see anybody who has attempted suicide as someone in dire need of help, and nothing more than that. If you see, mental health is much broader than suicidal persons. So we need to deal with more serious cases beyond even depression to a psychosis, which I have seen prevalent in places like Edo and Delta, where I'm from. The idea is that it's seen more like a cause, and people hardly want to associate with it. Even family members want to distance themselves from sufferers. Whereas, so what is more important is using legislation, as we have had. A few things that the administration of former President Muhammad Buhari did included signing into law the Mental Health Act. Very fantastic piece of legislation, which incorporates all the fundamental human rights in the Nigerian Constitution and attributes them to mental health patients and all persons suffering from one mental health disorder or the other. And so in that regard, it means you cannot, because we're talking about you can no longer continue to criminalize persons who are suffering from suicidal thoughts or suicidal attempts. So we should be looking forward to a more empathetic and compassionate society that is driven, by a legislation that encourages not only the health institutions but individuals and local government to help persons that are indicating some suicidal tendencies, and not at all in any way. So if you're considering that it is a universal human right, which indeed is, it means you can no longer say, oh, because which is something bad. I'm talking about disobeying traffic signs, which is a very terrible traffic offense that endangers
your psychological state.
It's everywhere, but it's wrong, because when you constantly begin to link helpful acts like psychological evaluation or psychiatric tests to be equated with punishment, you're making people feel there's something wrong. Whereas the mindset is this, and I expect this from mental health experts, to create the impression that this depression and even the worst forms of mental disorders, including psychosis, should be treated like malaria. And these are diseases like any other disease. In fact, if you look at the definition of what constitutes health, it's not only the absence of infirmities or disease, but a state of complete well-being in terms of physical, mental, and social. So in that case, we should change our mindset, and it starts with the law. No more, preventing, discriminating against persons in employment and other forms of consideration. When you say, oh, you've had a mental case before, we
so
can
you
employ
don't qualify.
And all that, but they now have the right to sue their employers. You can't do that anymore.
Great. Frank Tietie is a lawyer and a rise analyst. Thank you so much for joining us on News. That's all.